All right, Jose. So we are done with a long weekend of the Boston Pro. We were both at the show. We were both in my gym all week, getting to see a lot of these people face to face. Give me your. We have a lot to talk about, but give me your initial reaction to the show now that it's over with.
The show was way better than I had anticipated. I didn't realize how much was going to go into it as far as the lighting, the stage, the production value, the sound system. It was outstanding. And it was an intimate little venue. It was a smaller ballroom, but it fit apparently probably they had to be 500 or 600 seated and 500 standing, something around those numbers, maybe more. It's hard to tell, but it was, and I've spoken to some friends that showed up and they were blown away, because what they're used to seeing at local shows, they're either at high schools or auditoriums where you're kind of far back. This was up close. The stage was lower than normal, certainly lower than the Arnold stage. So you felt like these guys were standing right in front of you, and they were. So your actual ability to see them and judge them was outstanding. And wow, what a great event. I mean, so many guys came into town. Everyone from Ronnie Coleman, Jay Cutler, Phil Heath, Dexter, Victor Martinez, Brandon Curry. It was pretty awesome for, I was pleasantly surprised with how well it was done. I wasn't surprised with how well it was run because Steve's guys, he always runs a tight ship, Steve Weinberger. It was all his expediters, and that was really well done. But I was mostly just pleasantly surprised with how nice the venue itself was. Lended a really nice thing, and they're talking about doing it again next year, moving it to the Encore, which may be good as far as more space in the ballroom, but man, I have no problem with that. Where it was today, this weekend, that location, walking distance to many different restaurants, and I mean, it is expensive in Boston. You don't come to Boston if you don't plan to spend some money on parking alone. It's just nuts. But it was easy access to everything, and particularly easy access to your gym, which man, we can cover that in a minute if you want to go over the show and the results first. I want to look up quickly because I don't know past the top five who placed.
I was looking at the list this morning. I got it here. What division do you want?
Well, we can go over all of them, but I mostly want to see the here we go, official scorecard, Boston Pro. All right. So let's go over the men's open first because we're meatheads. Nate Spear was 11th out of 11, but if that's your 11th place finisher,
on the list I'm looking at, the ranking, the placings to the right. So Nate.
You're right.
Yeah, he's 11 on the list, but he got 8th.
Oh, nice. Justin
Mackey was 11th.
Wow.
So that really good placing for Nate, the hometown guy who looked awesome. This was a really stacked lineup. He and I spoke, I think it was just before finals. And, we talked about, I've thought about the strategy of when I make my eventual pro debut. Do you pick the stack show where there's a good chance you're going to get your ass kicked by the best in the world, but you get to stand next to them, you get the photos, you get to see how far off, or do you pull the guy Cisternino and do the Niagara? I'm messing with Guy here, all in good fun, but do you find the smaller show?
Lineup possible.
Yeah, the strategy where you're not going to get big names and you have a shot to place top 5, to place top 3, maybe win it, that kind of thing. And Nate way better than I do. But he's the guy that wants the real show, wants the challenge. He's a bodybuilder through and through, and he doesn't want the easy way out. He wanted to turn pro at nationals. He would do these big shows where he could have gone the route that I tried of international shows where he probably would have won, right? But he wanted to do things in a we'll call it more traditional manner, turn pro at very specific shows because it really meant something to him to do that.
Yeah, I think Nate is a smart guy, and he would do what is most convenient. And we had this discussion this weekend. You hear a lot of young girls and people. I'm doing my show, and I'm doing the Easterns to qualify for nationals. Why would you do that if the Cutler's right down the street? So now you got to drive or fly. You got to pay for hotels and be out of your element for a couple of days when you can literally just drive to the venue from your own bed. I think Nate is under the understanding that you do what is best going to suit you. So if we didn't have the Boston Pro, Nate's pro debut probably would have been the New York Pro, which is the closest he can drive. And, for many, many years, that's basically our hometown show.
Right.
I did it 5 years because it was the closest show for me. But Nate was awesome, and he brought the heat like he always does. And, I don't think he had much in the way of expectations, but just to do his best and see where he stood. And he certainly stood his own very well there.
Yeah, one spot behind Regan, and he got some comparisons where he can go back and look at the photos. And when I spoke to him too, he was just ecstatic to be there. He felt he brought his best. He knew kind of what matters. He was going to walk out of that thing saying, I did everything I could have done. I brought my best look to date, which is all I can control. Yeah. And I have tons and tons of people in the crowd cheering for me, which he did. It was, everybody was wearing these Nate Spear t-shirts in the crowd, and he got, maybe shy of a William Bonac or some of these big stars or Urs. He was right up there in terms of loudest applause.
Yeah, for sure. And some bodybuilding purists might even make an argument for Nate to beat Regan. I mean, he was certainly a lot harder, a lot more conditioned.
Yep.
Obviously Regan has the superior structure and all the other, posing presentation going for him. But man, I wouldn't argue it. If Steve is not against, especially if he believes in someone a lot, of kicking someone's ass down just to prove a point, and it wouldn't surprise me if that had happened. But anyway, yeah, Justin Mackey's another guy with a beautiful physique. He just, I don't know, he needs a little more muscle and a little more condition, but his shape, he can stand in any lineup and not, and do himself proud. He just needs a little more time.
One of the things I'll just point out, sometimes with these shows, certainly the New York Pro, the times that I've been there, you have really large classes, and there's some very big names because it's the New York Pro, but it's also, to your point earlier, it's the hometown show. So anyone that's a pro, be it, they retired 5 years ago and they're making a quick comeback. Like there's some always people that look out of place, right? When you get to a fourth call out, fifth call out, this show is certainly with Open didn't have that. Like to your point of, Justin Mackey he by any means is no slouch. The show was just that good.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if everyone else wasn't there and this guy showed up and, you're not familiar with pro bodybuilding, he would still be the best physique you've ever seen, But yeah, that said, then who was after him? He was
Islam
11.
Muhammad.
Yeah, and that guy was shredded and big. And I mean, that's how good this show was. That this guy's 10th and he is nasty. Striated quads, crazy shoulders, arms, great abs, and great condition. Um, that was awesome. That's a testament to the show. And then who was after that guy? 9.
So let's see. So Islam Muhammad 10, 9 was Doug Frucci.
Doug, my man, Doug. Doug was the hardest guy in the show. He's he's a gigantic frame, big old white guy, crazy Caucasian dry. What's funny is I was sitting with Flex Wheeler and he used that terminology. I'm not even sure if he knew that James Hollingshead used that term, but we were laughing about that. This guy is crazy dry. He just needs to pack on a little bit of muscle, keep at it. He's only 34 years old, and got plenty of time to do
big guy. He, maybe it's not a fair comparison, but just seeing him in person in the gym, he kind of reminds me of like a Matt Kuba in that, like, it might not be the most God-gifted structure you've ever seen, but you look at him and they've put in work.
Oh,
Good big size frame that they have to put more muscle on, unfortunately, because their frame's so big, but they bring what they can. They show up absolutely peeled. That was kind of where my mind was going, is, he might not have the best structure up there, but man, you knew he worked when you saw how peeled he was.
Oh yeah. And those guys kind of understand that. They know that this is a win. They beat 3 other guys. They have, like you said, they don't have the God-given structure or shape, but they add muscle. Doug's a guy who's definitely gonna be a force moving forward in the years to come if he continues at this pace. I mean, he's made outrageous progress in just the last year. I think he's 20 pounds heavier on stage.
So when I was making my way to the show in an Uber, running a little late, they were doing the individuals during prejudging, right? The go out for 30, 60 seconds or whatever. And because I didn't have the pay-per-view, I was listening to Fuad do the live stream, I think with James and Ian. And one of the things they were commenting on was like the quality of the live stream was very dark. So they were trying to, it looked like people weren't super conditioned. They're like, I can't tell if it's, we don't want to say these people aren't conditioned because it could just be, it's very dark and we can't see. And then Doug Frucci came on and they're like, holy shit, he's shredded. Okay, no, like we can see the condition here. It was kind of funny. Like they were like, you see everything on him, it's absolutely shredded. So they're like, oh, maybe those other people weren't at this level of shredded then, that was like the litmus test for them.
Yeah, well, that's just how hard he was.
Yeah.
Because pretty much everyone was in good shape, aside from a few. But
so after Doug, we have Nate Spear, which we talked about. 7th, Regan Grimes.
Well, we covered him. I spoke about him on the Muscle Development website there, YouTube. And it was just, he's tired. He got sick during his prep. He probably should have pulled out, but he didn't want to. And, had this planned and wanted to see his fans and whatnot and finish it through. He looked tired. And God bless him. He showed up and put on a good show. He's such a good kid. I spoke to him after the show and he was all smiles and all positivity and he's going to come back and be better. That's simple as that. I mean, when you're a young kid and you're doing this, it's still fun. It's still fun, even if you're not winning. And, you learn something and you take something away from every event. And I'm sure he's gonna. So, maybe we'll see him later in the year. He's probably, I think when I was talking to him and Milos there, thinking about something maybe October, November, something right before the Olympia.
He's qualified though, right? He qualified after the Olympia?
Yeah.
So he's set there. It's probably just a matter of confidence that you can peak the right way, right? After, because these shows, certainly last year was the Legend, right? Where he was in the top 3 with Clarita winning, where that was arguably one of his best looks, at least in the last couple of years. He packed on some size, he had the condition, he had the fullness. And so I guess the disappointment is our own assumption of if he did that in that little bit of time with Milos, what did he do since then? You know, and you know better than anyone. You don't always nail these things. You know, like he might be in a much better place and packed on even more muscle. He just, due to getting sick, he wasn't able to show it this go around.
Oh yeah, we're not allowed to say that word.
I don't know. I'm assuming no. So
yeah, right. Anyway, he did get that, and
yeah.
And that certainly puts a damper on things. But
so 6 was Phil Klahar. Do you just want to move ahead and go to the next person?
Let's skip over Phil. Phil's awesome. Phil is huge, round. You know, he's the guy, as you said in the gym, like he's that guy you see and you're like, that is what I think of when I think of a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
Big, huge, round, crazy looking dude. And he brought it, but you know, he just wasn't as conditioned as the guys in front of him. And it shows, you know, it makes a difference. So he ended up pretty much where he should have. Had he been ultra dry, he may have made some real noise, like top 3. You know, he has more muscle than Kuklow per square inch.
Yep.
Rounder, that more rounder, crazy bubbly look. So he could have ended up significantly better. And then what do we get? Max Charles?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah, Max Charles was 5th. I had said in one of the wrap-ups that my eye was drawn to Max at the Arnold, even though he didn't do well and he wasn't at his best. But there's certain shots that really, you know, your eye is drawn over to him, like, holy cow, the shoulders, the pecs, the abs, the detail, the grainy hardness, and even his legs from behind. I don't know how he did it at a late age in his life. He brought his legs up. They're not small anymore. They're not even a distraction anymore. What is the most distracting is his high lats. It's you know, his back double and his rear lat spread. They don't. It just, that's where he loses. You know, he just doesn't have a lot of thick muscle and in detail on his back, or even real shape. It's weird. But damn, I would take his pecs and shoulders and arms and abs over
from the front. That front, you know, most muscular, or a lot of those shots are crazy. How much do you think, you know, when I was at the Arnold and I saw him, I think what's ingrained in my head is that one Arnold where Milos worked with him, where he was the hardest guy on stage, right? He might have gotten 7th or not placed well, but people were talking about him the next day of, holy shit, did you see what he looked like? So when you have one of those moments, how much is that hurting you going forward if you can't duplicate that? And you know, it's like who was he used to work with Aceto, and Patrick had that Olympia where he placed like 10th.
Yeah.
But he was the most peeled guy in the show.
Yeah.
And he hasn't had that look since then, right? So you have like, this is what he could look like. He doesn't. Does that hurt people when, you know, even if it was 2 or 3 years ago, could that hurt Max now because he had that one showing where they nailed it and he hasn't really duplicated that since?
100% it does. And you would say it shouldn't. They should judge you against what you're standing next to, but often they're judging you at your best. So against your best. So if you come out lights out and then every show thereafter is anything less than that, they're going to say you're off.
Yeah. He's
off. Even if you're better than some of the other guys, depending on the lineup you're in, you could do very poorly, or you could just skate by and place okay. But yeah, it definitely affects the way they look at you because they see that they think you're less than what you could be.
right.
And, you know, it is what it is. And in this lineup, that was the best that Max was going to do for sure.
Yep. Let's see. So 4th, we had Samson.
Unbelievable. I'm a huge fan of his look, huge fan of his physique, his presentation, his posing. Nice guy. I met him in the elevator coming out. He's huge. He's tall. He's got everything. He's another one. similar to Max, where his back is his weakness. You know, he's got crazy legs, awesome from behind. And he even has a lot of detail on his back. He just doesn't have a lot of thickness. Because his rear double is very good. He just needs a little more thickness, a little more time. I think he's another one who's early 30s, who's got plenty of time to improve. Good arms, great midsection. And again, the way he carries himself on stage is outstanding. He had a great posing routine. You know, and he has for quite a while now. Like his last 3-4 outings have all been very memorable.
We didn't talk about it, but I'm sure you noticed at the Arnold, and he finally just released a video the other day that his routine at the Arnold was like verbatim, pose for pose with the music of some of the greats.
Yes.
Like I caught it at one point. Like clearly, I haven't seen his whole video where he was doing the split screen of here's the original. I didn't get a chance to watch it all, but while I was there live, he had the flex wheeler routine,
the voiceover too.
Yeah, and then Creed came on, right, and it was Lavroni afterwards.
Yeah.
That was a creative thing, right? A way for certainly the bodybuilding purist. People like you and I were going to be able to catch that, and if you didn't, there's still a great routine.
Oh, I caught it immediately because I could hear their voices talking.
Yeah. Yep.
I knew what he was up to.
Yep.
And he did a great job because he can pose.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's going to continue to move up. He's a star. He is definitely going to be tough in any lineup he's in.
So third, Steve Kuklow.
Steve, what more can you say? He was, 2 weeks in a row brought his best condition of all time, arguably his best package of all time. Ran into really tough lineups, and he did what he could, did the best he could. Steve's very consistent. Yeah. He has been very consistent for quite a while now, and he's a hard worker, and he can still get better, and is going to get better when he mixes that condition with a little more fullness. He's going to be nuts.
Do you think for him he needs more fullness, or he just needs to add more muscle?
Probably add a little more muscle and be a little fuller. He's got such a big frame. He could definitely afford to add some more muscle. Right. I mean, it's a lot easier said than done when you've been competing for 16 years already.
I mean, you could say it for almost anybody. Like Bonac would be a person that you're like, he probably doesn't want to add more muscle, right? Because where does it go? Maybe even Justin is another one, right? Where, but certainly for Kuklow, right? He absolutely could.
Oh, and it's crazy to think because when you see him up close, he's got to have 23-inch arms. His calves are almost as big as his arms, if not bigger.
Yep.
He's big in the shoulders. He just needs a little more pec and back thickness, front to back thickness, and he's good. His legs could use a little more separation or striations. When he locks out his leg, you don't see the same as like Bonac with those crazy striations. And I'm not sure if that's the way he's posing them, or what. But he's got big legs. He could bring out a little more craziness in the legs, which would certainly help. But yeah, you're right. It is. He could add some more muscle. It wouldn't hurt him. That's for sure. Justin.
Yep.
That was a good call. I was on the fence. I really think it was a coin toss, but Justin did improve from the week before. His confidence on stage was really evident. He's round and huge. I can't get over how big he's gotten.
Yeah.
In the last few years. I remember he did a show, I want to say it was in Connecticut against Boston Lloyd. It was the two of them in the overall.
Wow.
Yeah. And he had the crazy biceps, but he wasn't that much bigger than Boston. He's obviously a lot shorter, but he won it. He won the overall there. But I mean, he couldn't have been more than 215, 217. That wasn't that long ago. We're talking 4 or 5 years ago.
Wow. What is he, 270 now?
He's gotta be.
Yeah.
He's gotta be. He looks every bit of 270.
Yeah.
And he's only 5'8", 5'9". Yeah. Yeah, but he has incredible structure. Those shoulder, that's like Jay Cutler width.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about his shoulders, because it's either, when he was on the front relaxed, it was like football pads.
Yeah.
Everyone else, like I looked at I think it was a front relax pose, and you had Samson, who had like what looked like normal shoulders, maybe slightly small if you're, depending on who you're comparing him to, but Kuklow, and you go down the line and his just dart out an extra couple of inches, and they come up a little bit. There's just so much muscle. And obviously he's gotten criticism of, is there something wonky going on with them? Because they're shaped a little weird. They're abnormally large. Maybe there's something in them, maybe there isn't, maybe it's just his genetic shape. But how much does that help him or hurt him?
Well, it obviously hurts him because you hear it over and over again.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure he's been marked down for it a couple of times. I don't know what it is because I didn't go up and touch him, but it does look a little suspect to me.
Yeah.
Clearly something goes in there. I don't think it's what people think. Like he's not just going to put synthol in his shoulders. He doesn't have to. He has the widest shoulders on stage.
Right.
He just should probably avoid that area, get some, some therapy on the shoulders, work them out. I don't know what it is, to be honest. It could just be a weird shape, that is brought on by adding, by hitting them,
Right.
I don't know what it is, so it's hard for me but I can tell you it does look suspect to me.
Yeah, right.
I'm sure it's hurt him at one time or another. It did not hurt him in this show.
No.
Because he did very, very well. But yeah, shoulders or not shoulders, even if his shoulders were perfect, he wasn't beating Bonac. Not today, not this weekend. I think, and I argue that Bonac was better here than he was at the Arnold. And I was sitting in the same seats at both shows. And I can tell you the hamstring, glute, density, detail was significantly drier here in Boston. His skin was just saran wrapped everywhere, and he might have been a little smaller, a little more balanced. At the Arnold, he was so full and so huge, his upper body, that it was unimaginably round.
Yeah.
Where here he was still crazy, but he looked a little more balanced, a little more symmetrical here. It was such a good look for him. And I find it hard to believe that someone can beat that. Like even Hardy's going to have a tough time.
Yeah,
with
so
that.
that was actually my next question is, I guess you could look at it two ways of, this year's Olympia, or, maybe it's easier to say, where would this Bonac have placed in last year's Olympia?
Oh, that's a great question.
Certainly I think Brandon was better at last year's Olympia, so it's like, maybe like he arguably beat Brandon last week at the Arnold. That's certainly a battle between those two. Does he beat Hadi?
I think he might. I think he might. If this kind of version of him shows up, it'd be very hard to be, because from behind, his rear double will beat Hadi, definitely. That the back detail, that's Hadi's weakest pose, is his back double. And there's certain things where Hadi doesn't have those calves, and they say they don't judge calves, but when you see someone on a side tricep and the calf is crazy, the detail between the quad and the hamstring, and just the packed on muscle, they're about the same height. And I'd say Bonac's a little bigger still, especially through the arms, the delts.
So speaking of things, whether they judge or don't judge, Bonac made mention of this in his victory speech, his gyno, right? That he, people were talking about it, and that to me, it was, you know, a trained eye will see it, but it wasn't bad like you sometimes see, certainly at local shows or does that at that level with how he looked, everything that he brought, right? Like to whether the Boston Pro or the Arnold, does that small amount of gyno hurt somebody?
If you're looking for it, if you're looking for a reason to have the other guy beat him, then sure. And if that's all it comes down to, and it's that close, then I guess you got to pick something. You got to pick one winner.
Right.
Someone's got to win. And you know, I don't think it was enough for him to lose the Arnold, but apparently someone did. So that was the reason, or that was one of the reasons. And you know, when you analyze it and you think about it, Brandon didn't have gyno. Brandon has an exceptional midsection. So those are the two things it came down to. Then sure, I have to agree with your decision. But what I took away from his little speech after he won, he was very emotional. Is we're going to see a lights out hottie at the Olympia. He's going to go get this surgery done. Yeah, because he was discussing it. He said it on stage. I can go get my gyno fixed. And he's going to get it fixed. And then, you know, probably a couple of weeks. And he'll have the whole rest of the year to recover. And there's certain things that you don't have to do anymore once that's gone. You know, if he's pounding himself with anti-estrogens, lowering his estrogen, which is an important hormone for muscle building, you don't want to whack it out completely, which they probably had to do. Moving forward, we're going to see a bigger, better, harder, crazier version of Bonac.
That's the thing is like the improvements that he made from the Olympia to the Arnold, which is not very long, right? You're talking, I mean, that's a prep, January, February, March, right? Like from where the Olympia was, and that was a drastic improvement. What can they do from Boston Pro to the Olympia?
Oh, I'm excited to see it. And he's inspired and reinvigorated and healthy, and a little downtime will do him well. And I think he has met his match with the right coach that is used to dealing with freaks. You know, a lot of people say, "Oh, Chad only does well with the big freaks." Well, guess what? Bonac is a big freak. You know, he may only be 5'5", 5'6", but he is gigantic. Yeah. So he's going to do. I'm excited. I can't wait to see it. I predict no less than top 3. No way.
Yeah.
You know, there's other guys up there, but no way. You know, I don't see anyone beating. I think it's going to be you know, and you got Rami, Hadi, Brandon, him,
Nick Walker.
Nick, yeah. Oh man, I'm already excited.
I want to buy my tickets now. Plan to go.
Yeah,
there.
Right.
Yeah.
So no, good for William. He's going to get a much deserved break in recovery, and you know, he spoke about some family issues and you know, some financial issues, and thank God he just made some money, and he's going to be able to take care of his family and do all the things he needs to do to come back and be one of the best in the world again.
Yep.
Which it certainly is.
So I guess we can cover classic.
Yes.
Obviously there's one star to talk about, you know. They didn't have a lot of big names. Unfortunately, Breon bailed the week of the show. Just after I think Urs announced he was doing it. At least the way that they broke
ducking Urs?
What's that?
Was he ducking Urs?
I know that's what it made it look like, but who knows? You know, we don't want to be the shit talk.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. But they released the news on the same day. You know, Urs is in, and oh, by the way, Breon's out. Yeah. Any standouts in there besides, obviously Urs is the standout. And you know, we'll get into him, but anyone else stand out for you?
There was some really good ones. One, Chris Aceto's guy, Lamar. I don't know. Lamar Shaw.
He was 4th.
Yeah, he had a great physique, great strided quads. Again, it's the weirdest thing because he was so dry and hard everywhere except for the glutes. Like as if I don't know if he has a connection with his glutes or he doesn't squat or something, but his upper body was bubbly, round, needs some bigger arms, but he was really good, and he's one to look out for in upcoming shows as well. Third
I'll give a
place,
quick shout out. There's one kid who came into my gym with his lovely wife, and I don't even know how old the baby was, one or two. Jared Keys, young kid on the smaller side, compared to the guys that were up there, out of Virginia. He placed 7th, but this was his pro debut. So really nice kid, very peeled. I saw him in the gym a day or so before the show. And, he's going to be one of those guys that with some time, his structure's great. He showed up peeled. He just needs more of what he had, just needs to get bigger. All right, Urs, what's your reaction after obviously spending a week hanging out with Urs in the gym and watching him perform, pose, and ultimately win?
Well, he's a special guy, He's got such a magnetic personality and a look to him, and most importantly, he brings the physique and he puts on a show, a performance, unique poses that nobody else was doing, the transitions that nobody else was doing, a connection with the crowd that nobody else was doing. You felt like you paid money that night to go see him perform. Yeah. He was the highlight of the show. Everything else was just opening up for him. Yeah. And he sure delivered, what a great guy. What a great story, young kid, 23 years old, way more mature than his years, because he's puts time and effort into his craft, and you can see it. He had time for everyone. Everyone loved him. No matter where he went, he was getting mobbed. And but before we get ahead of ourselves, like, sure, he was the greatest thing in Boston this weekend. Am I predicting him to win the Olympia this year? No, I don't think so. I think Chris is still significantly bigger, wider, more muscle, more mature. But is Urs one of those guys on his way there? For sure, especially if you're going by the trend of Chris Bumstead. Urs is the next best thing, he's like Bumstead Jr., like that, the width, the waist, the vacuum, the presentation, the confidence on stage. I still think Ramon Dino there is a more heavily muscled. I'm not sure Ramon has the confidence on stage that the polish on stage that Urs has. If Ramon had all that, then Ramon would be next in line. But those things matter, and I'm not saying he's not. I think Ramon just beat Urs at the Arnold, so that tells you how good he is. But this division is certainly healthy and exciting and growing.
Like, think about the top 4, or we'll say even top 5, right? Brianna will be part of it. Top 5 of classic. I'm with you in that I think for the next year or two, Bumstead's a little bit ahead of the pack. Just of how much muscle he's able to bring, and everything else you just mentioned, the polish and all that. Yeah. But it gets really interesting of who's second from there.
Yeah.
And it's exactly that of certainly Terrence, would probably be on paper, the pick for that. But now that you have Ramon and Urs in there, that gets really interesting to see how that shakes out.
Yeah, that's going to be, they're hot on Terrence's trail. Yeah. So it's going to push him to a new level. I just don't know with the weight cap how much more Terrence can add. As you seen him in person, he's not an overwhelming figure. He's not very big, and he could use to add a little more fullness, a little more round, some more roundness to him, to his arms and back and packs. His legs are phenomenal. but to add a little more upper body roundness would be scary, but I don't know if the weight cap will allow it. I know that Urs is not even close to the cap.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
Yeah, that is crazy.
You
He's a
can see
lot.
people have posted side by sides of him and Bumstead, right? And like clearly Bumstead wins in those
Yeah.
shots because of the extra muscle.
Yeah.
But the structure is there. You can just start to see, okay, he needs a little bit more legs, needs more arms, but the frame is there. And what's on his frame already is spectacular.
Yeah.
He just needs whatever that number is, 5 or 6 or 7 more pounds. If he can, I don't know. Did you talk to him about what he weighed on stage or weigh-ins or all that stuff?
He's somewhere around 99 kilos,
Okay.
which is like 218, 217. And he's probably allowed 228, something
Okay.
like that.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's significant. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, he's probably 7 to 10 pounds under the cutoff.
Okay.
So that is pretty extreme when you consider how dry he is.
Yeah.
If he could add 7 or 8 more pounds of tissue on that frame, he'd be dangerous. I believe Bumstead is a little bit under the weight cap too. And I think Chris is 2 or 3 inches taller than Urs.
Right.
Urs was standing next to Cutler and he was barely, a little taller than him, an inch taller.
Urs says he's what, 5'11"? Is
Yeah,
Jay supposed to be 5'11" too?
No, Jay had sneakers on with big heels.
Okay.
So Jay's 5'9" and Urs is 5'11" and change.
Okay.
And I think Bumstead's around 6'2". So it's enough of a difference where Bumstead can weigh more and he's taller and a bit wider too.
I'll echo what you were saying of, obviously he's incredible, just, age aside, just, he's an incredible competitor. His presentation on stage, just in the mandatories, in his setup, how, every little transition, but before he hit the pose, when they called the next pose, you had to turn to the side, turn to the back.
Yeah.
He was like, the military at that point, the way he was hitting it, but you watched it, all those little things, right? Made you obviously had the best physique on stage as well, but you watched him in all of his transitions. And obviously the posing routine is on a whole other level with his mom, who's a professional ballet dancer, choreographing his routine.
It's obvious.
Yeah. His routine is on a whole other level, but just the mandatories, you see how much more polished he is than every other guy. Some of the people did the normal side chest and they dropped their arms and they, step to the side and, okay, let me set it up. And he was putting on a show just from that transition.
Yeah. And it's funny, a lot of people try to do it and they get borderline annoying. You're like,
yeah. Yep.
Where with him, everything, you can't take your eyes off him. So it's a rare person. One, you need the physique to back it up.
Yeah.
Which he has. And he knows just the right amount of added whatever to help him, not hurt him.
He's one of these guys that I see just from, having this gym and having lots of college girls come in and people who couldn't tell you that, Rami's Mr. Olympia. They don't know any of that, but they know Chris Bumstead, right?
Yeah.
They know who Urs is now.
Oh yeah.
I saw the picture. They're funny. They just know him by his Instagram name. They're like, that's Miracle Bear.
Yeah.
Like, Urs. And they're like, I don't know what his real name is. That's Miracle Bear. Right.
Yeah.
And so he's certainly catching on social media. Obviously he's a good looking kid, kind of that same Bumstead effect,
Yeah.
bringing more attention to the sport.
Yeah. So he was great. The guy, Andrew Wilson was third. And then Andrew Wilson, I met in Alabama when I was down there. I trained with him. You met him in Miami. He was in the posing room.
Yes.
Huge arms, huge back. I had told you leading into the show, I'm like, this kid's going to do well. And he did. He ended up placing third. Yep. I had never heard of the second place guy. What was his name? Tony Dong? Tony's Dong. He was really good. He was really well put together. Just the right amount of muscle.
Is that the guy you were showing me on Instagram whose name was Lil Dong?
Yeah, that's your nickname.
Yeah.
The name you want to be called by. No, I don't know. I don't think it was him, but
Okay.
anyway, he's really good. I'd never heard of him. He's from Phoenix, Arizona or something.
Yep,
And,
yep.
we're going to see a lot of that. A lot of these guys coming out of the woodwork that we never heard of because they were probably middleweights or lightweights, bodybuilders. And now they have a resurgence, a life to be able to go out. It doesn't matter how big you are. Terrence has showed the world.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter as long as you've got the goods. You don't have to be 6'2". You can be, a smaller dude that's well put together.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that makes it a little more exciting. To be a smaller bodybuilder, you have to be 100% wacky. Just unheard of, like a Clarita or a Bonac or a Hadi, to make any noise at all, especially in the open division.